I found myself hiding inside my own home. My husband was outside, pounding on the front door, ringing the doorbell like a madman. He opened the garage door, I'm assuming to see if my car was inside. He went through the side gate and into my backyard to spy in through the windows. And I stood frozen inside, terrified that if I opened that door, I might never find the strength to close it again. 7 years ago, I woke up as a free woman, December 1st, 2018. My divorce had been finalized the day before. My toxic marriage was officially over. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. But getting to that morning required 11 months of some of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make. Decisions that started when my husband stormed out in a rage on New Year's Day, blaming me for something ridiculous. 10 days later, he came back with a letter, and I'll share a bit of that with you shortly. If you're in a toxic relationship right now, wondering if you're tolerating too much or if there's hope on the other side and you can rebuild your life after leaving, this video is for you. I am living proof that you can. Let me show you how I got here. It started on New Year's Day 2018. We'd only been married 10 months at that point, but I was already walking on eggshells. It was like someone had flipped a switch the moment we got married, and he became controlling of my time and energy. He wanted to know where I was, who I was with, what I was doing. And if I didn't spend time with him, if I went out for coffee with a friend, I would come home to him pouting or giving me the silent treatment or getting defensive and mean and just really controlling. And so it became exhausting to deal with all the retaliation and retribution that I would get when I did do something that he didn't like. And so I stopped doing things that I loved, like hot yoga, because it just became not worth it. But that morning, on New Year's morning, I decided to go to yoga because I wanted to start the new year off on a good foot, feeling good about myself. I asked him if he wanted to go, and he said no. I had gained almost 20 pounds in the short time that we had been married, and I felt really unhealthy. So this was a way to start my new year off in a good way. And looking back, I realized the weight gain wasn't from eating poorly. It was from all the stress that I was dealing with. I sweat and cried a lot in that hot yoga class. It felt so relieving to just be able to sweat and cry without it all just mixed together, right? It was probably cathartic somehow to release some stress and toxicity that I didn't even realize had been built up. And after class, I posted on Facebook, I checked in at the yoga studio and posted on Facebook that something to the effect of starting my new year off on a great foot in a great way. And he wasn't even on Facebook, but he somehow got wind of that post. And when I got home, he stonewalled me for hours. He wouldn't tell me what was wrong. He wouldn't say anything. And finally, with disgust, he said, "When was the last time you posted something about us on Facebook?" And something in me snapped. How dare he accuse me of something so benign, so ridiculous? And I took out my phone and pulled up the post that I had made of his daughter's last-minute wedding crisis just 2 weeks prior. And I basically shoved my phone in his face to prove to him that I was doing all I could to give him what he was asking for and what he said that he needed. I was livid and I was so taken aback. It just seemed so absurd. Later that afternoon, after a lot of silence and tension, I just needed to get out of the house. I needed some time to breathe, some time to think, and just kind of clear my head and calm myself. And so I told him that I was taking the movies that we had rented to watch on New Year's Eve back to the Red Box at Safeway. So I left, dropped off the movies, and decided to drive around the neighborhood just a bit to look at Christmas lights. And again, just to give myself a little bit of breathing space, a little bit of time to process what in the hell was actually going on here. Again, we had only been married 10 months, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out what had snapped and what had switched in him. And so I was gone for maybe a total of 30 to 40 minutes. When I walked in the house, he was on the couch, curled up in the fetal position, sobbing. And it scared me. He was so upset. I thought someone had to have died. He was so inconsolable. He wouldn't say anything. He just kept sobbing. So I just waited. And then he dropped the bomb. He said, "Where have you been for so long?" And he accused me of having an affair. Again, I was gone for maybe 40 minutes total. How in the world would I have the time and the energy? I was always in his presence. So this was shocking to me because, again, I was rarely out of his sight. And it was exhausting to live in this kind of, I don't even know what to call it, turmoil, chaos, constantly stressing my nervous system. I realize now, I was in constant fight or flight or freeze. And I was at my wit's end. I had tried everything, counseling, just everything, giving up things like yoga to, go to work and be home then directly from work. I had tried everything to get back to the doting, loving man that he was when we met. And we had dated for 2 years. So it wasn't like I made a rash decision to get married. And at the time, I didn't realize that this was a tactic and that this was not heartfelt. He was on the couch and suddenly his demeanor shifted. He got up from the couch without a word, walked out to the garage, grabbed a whole handful of those big black trash garbage bags, and went upstairs, stormed upstairs. I was sitting here in this room, and the bedroom is right above me, and I could hear a huge commotion upstairs. I had no idea what was happening. So I went upstairs to see what was going on, and I found him red-faced, sweating profusely. It was December. It wasn't hot out. And he was taking his stuff, his belongings, just grabbing things randomly from the closet and throwing them into these black garbage bags, just stuffing things in as fast as he could. I, he was so angry, so enraged. You could see it in his face and in his actions, in his behavior. And I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do because I'd never seen anyone, I don't think, in my life so out of their mind. I very calmly just said, "It doesn't have to be this way." And he glared at me and he said, "You left me no choice." So I left the bedroom and I went downstairs and sat in the family room, confused about what to do. I could hear him storming down the stairs, dragging bags of stuff out through the garage and throwing them into the back of his truck. And then he would go back upstairs and make another trip down. I was confused. I was bewildered. I was stunned and dazed. I didn't know what to do. But it was odd. For the first time, I felt really calm. And I think that came from, I finally realized something in me clicked, that there was nothing that I did to cause this, and there was nothing that I could do. to change it. Everything I had tried didn't work, and it wasn't about that. This was about his inner battle, his inner demon, and it had nothing to do with me. I just happened to be the target of it. He left that night, and I never spoke directly to him again. The aftermath of that day and night was super confusing. There were so many emotions, and I didn't know what to do with them all. There was guilt and sorrow and grief and relief. And with the relief came more guilt because I felt bad for feeling relieved. And then there was 10 days of silence. Again, a big part of me was relieved. It was so wonderful to sit in the silence. But I also didn't know what to do with that silence, right? Because I had been on edge for so long. It did feel, though, like the biggest part of me was done because again, felt the relief from not having this cloud of anxiety following me all the time, waiting for him to drop the next bomb, waiting for his next attack. That cloud was finally parting, and it felt relieving. It felt freeing. And again, the biggest part of me was done. And with the way he left, I was sure that he was done as well, that he would not come back. 5 days later, I had what I can only call divine intervention, a conversation with a woman, a heaven-sent woman, random conversation. She was a therapist, a licensed therapist dealing with narcissistic personality disorder. And I had no idea even what that was at the time. She described to me the cycle that this type of person will take you through. First, they idealize you, or what's called love bombing. And that's exactly what he did to me. Then they start to devalue you. They start to minimize you. They start to nitpick at you. They start to pit you against people that you're close to. They criticize you. They belittle you. They want you to feel less valued than you are. And then the third phase is the discard phase, which is what I had just been through. And she said there's a fourth phase, which is the Hoover phase, and that is just cycling back around. So this truly is a cycle, a circle. So they become like a Hoover vacuum to suck you back in. And then the cycle starts again with idealizing you, love bombing you. Then they take you back through the devaluing and discard phase. And as long as you allow it, she said the cycle will continue. She described his behaviors to a T. I felt like she knew him personally. She described him so well. She said exact things that he had said to me, and it blew my mind how spot on she was with somebody she had never met before. And what scared me was that she assured me he would be back. I told her that there was no way he was coming back. She didn't see how angry, how livid he was when he left, how enraged he was. But she guaranteed me that he would be back. And she said, you need to be prepared. I'm going to tell you about a book that she recommended in a little bit in the video. But she recommended a couple of books for me to read. I downloaded them that night on my Kindle and started devouring them. And they were invaluable to me. And she was right. I just never imagined it would happen the way it did. Fast forward 10 days after he left, and just 5 days after that conversation with her, and I found myself hiding inside my own home. My husband was outside pounding on my front door and ringing the doorbell like a madman. I knew it was him because it was a Thursday night at 9 p.m. and I live in a gated community. Who else would show up unannounced acting like this? My dog was tracking him from inside the house, so I moved according to her moves so that I could stay hidden from him. He opened my garage door, I'm assuming to see if my car was there. he went around to the side gate and through the side gate, spying in my windows. And I stood frozen inside, terrified that if I opened the door, if I answered the door to him, I might never find the strength to close it again. And here's the thing, he had a key. He could have just walked in, but that's not what this was about. This was about scaring me. It was about putting fear in me. It was about control. I was able at one point to sneak upstairs, and so I could watch the street from my bedroom. And I called a friend from up there in a panic, and she said, "Why don't you just answer the door?" And I realized later, people outside of this type of situation don't realize the fear that has been purposefully instilled in us, the prison that we have, the invisible prison that we have found ourselves in. Eventually, I saw him walk away from the house, get in a car, and leave. And when I felt safe enough, I opened the front door to find a single rose and a 4-page typed letter. When I first read the letter, I thought that it was sincere. I thought that he had realized what he had done. And it took reading it a few times before the real meaning set in, before I could see the manipulation behind the words. Let me read you a few portions of the letter so you can see what I mean. He said, "As terribly difficult as this position is and has been, I would not change the fact that it happened. Through it, I have come to understand how this separation has enlightened me, truly enlightened me. It has been a very healthy journey for me." Notice whose experience he's talking about. He storms out in a rage on New Year's Day and leaves me with no explanation as to why. And then 10 days later comes back with a letter. And the letter is all about how healthy and enlightening this has been for him. My pain isn't even mentioned. I'm not anywhere in the reality of his letter. And this is a huge red flag that he's not apologizing. He is trying to justify how this was the best thing for him. The second thing I want to read you, the experts have told me to give you space, but I would rather buck conventional wisdom and go with my heart. We were seeing a therapist, and I'm sure that he contacted her and was told to just give her space. And that is his response. It sounds romantic at first, right? But what he's really saying is the rules don't apply to me. Your boundaries don't matter. And healthy boundaries are not something that I do or that I know. That's what he was saying. What you've asked for doesn't apply to me, even if the experts tell me to do that. This type of person is above that. They think that they're above that. And they want what matters to them, not what is good for someone else. And I realized that this was the pattern throughout our whole marriage, our whole relationship, was control disguised as love. The third thing he said, which was the most revealing of all, "I loved you like I was looking into a mirror. I expected you to reflect my love as if you were me. You were standing on the other side of the mirror, showing me love, but I couldn't see it. I was waiting for the reflection to love me my way. I should have been looking through a window where I could clearly see you and your way of loving me. I have shattered that mirror, and in its place, I have put a new window." Oh my gosh. When I first read it, I was like, oh, it just sounded so sweet, so self-aware, so deep, right? But listen to what he's actually admitting. He wasn't really loving me at all. He was loving the reflection of himself. My love only counted if it looked exactly like his, like what he wanted, like what he thought he was showing. And that is classic narcissism. I know that now. I didn't know that then. I just knew after reading the letter a few times that it didn't sit right with me. But that's not empathy, that's entitlement. And it's not connection, it's possession. And the irony is that he literally uses a narcissist style mirror metaphor to describe himself and still manages to turn it into this poetic enlightenment that he had instead of real accountability. And that's what narcissists don't fall in love with people. They fall in love with how people make them feel about themselves. And this is what the mythical god Narcissus did. He looked in the reflection of himself in the pond, and he got so close and so deep and fell so much in love with the reflection that the myth says that he drowned in the pond because he was trying to get so close to himself, because he loved himself so much. And with that section of the letter, it clicked with me what he had told me once when we were having a disagreement. The disagreement, I don't know what it was about, but it was something so benign, like what flavor of ice cream is better, vanilla or chocolate? And he was badgering me to change my mind to be whatever it was that whatever side that he was on. Again, I don't remember what it was about, but it was something really benign. And I got really exasperated by his like pushing me and trying to corner me into changing my mind. And I finally looked at him and I said, why is it that you can't just embrace our differences? And his eyes kind of got glassy and dark, and he got right in my face and he said, because we aren't different. We are the same. We are one. After he left and I found out about narcissism, I started studying and reading and listening to everything I could about it. And I heard something once that made this click even more. And it both scared me and made me really sad at the same time. This person said that a narcissist loathes themselves so much that they find someone else to portray or to project the things that they hate about themselves, the flaws they think they have. They project those onto the other person, and then they attempt to annihilate the other person in an attempt to, they think, annihilate the demons that are inside of them. And again, that both scared me that I was in that situation where I now could see that that was happening. And it also made me really sad that he was so demonized and that he had done this to other people, that he was so demonized that he was wanting to annihilate me in order to feel better about himself. That is narcissism. And that's what caused him in that disagreement to say, we're not different, because he had started to see me as him. And he was trying to get rid of the things that he hated about himself by diminishing them in me. So this letter wasn't about understanding me. It was about keeping access to me. It was about controlling me. What's wild now is I can see exactly what he was doing. I see the pattern that he took me through, that she described to me, that therapist described to me. And now he was in the Hoover stage of trying to suck me back into his life, because that's what they do, is they just take you through the stages and they'll continue the cycle as long as you let them. And that's the trick with emotionally abusive relationships. Sometimes the most dangerous part isn't the yelling or the rage or the silence or the stonewalling. It's the calm, poetic apology that makes you start doubting yourself. It takes away a little bit of your power because you start thinking that you're the one that's wrong. And that's what gaslighting is. But here's what I didn't realize when I initially read the letter. His rage-filled exit on New Year's Day was actually my lucky break. He suddenly and unknowingly put the power back in my hands. If he hadn't left like he did, crazed and enraged, I'm not sure that I could have found or gathered the strength to ask him to leave. So he unknowingly released the power back to me. And for the first time, all the power, all the decisions were in my hands. I got to decide what my future looked like going forward. And for my peace and sanity, a few days later, I had all the locks changed on my house as a gift to myself for my birthday. This was a step in shifting from feeling like a victim to starting to make empowered decisions for myself. I filed for divorce in August of 2018, and for the first time in a long time, I was the one making the decisions for my life. But even with the power back in my hands, there was something I kept doing that almost derailed this. And that is, I kept wanting closure. I wanted to know why he did this, why someone who said they loved me would do something so harmful, so devious. I started seeing a trauma-informed therapist the week after he left. And I went to my first session and asked her that question. Why? Why would he do this? Why would someone do something like this? And she basically said, you need to stop asking why, because you most likely will never get the answer. And you will stay clinging to needing to know that, and your healing can't start while you still are in that place of needing to know the answer. But she said, no one knows the answer but him, and he is not likely to give it to you, and he's not likely to give it to you in the way that you want. And I realized part of me wanted to hear from the other person that you were right, I was wrong, I'm sorry, I hurt you, right? I wanted that heartfelt apology. I wanted to hear, I screwed up, and I wanted to hear that he and his family that they understood that I had done everything I could to keep this from failing. I realized I wanted validation, and I thought that that validation would give me closure. But what I realized was that I already had all the closure I needed. The mistreatment of me was the closure. Why do I need any other words or validation besides that? I don't. And seeking an explanation just kept me trapped in his narrative. It kept me trapped in his story, in his prison. And that is not where I wanted to stay. And I realized that I was looking for logic in illogical behavior. I was never going to find logic in what he did. And I was asking for someone who was hell-bent on misunderstanding me to finally understand me. That also is not going to happen. And again, continuing to chase that closure was just going to prevent me from moving forward and healing. And so I let it go. I let it completely go. The thought that I was going to have a conversation with him that would give me the closure. And real closure, I realized that comes from within, not from them. And that was my choice to make. My divorce was finalized November 30th, 2018. I woke up on December 1st, the next day, feeling something that I hadn't felt in years, and that was free. That was 7 years ago, and here's what I know now from that experience. The first thing is that he was my perfect wake-up call. He was the perfect person to trigger every pattern that I had been living throughout my life. I just thought when the right person came along, when I was in the right relationship, that these patterns, I would be able to heal them in that relationship. Instead, that relationship exposed these patterns to the point of where I could no longer ignore them. He was the final brick to the head that I needed to go to work on myself. And what hurt me the most is what ended up waking me up the most. The second thing I know now is that you will boomerang back to your old behaviors without looking at the beliefs that you have about yourself. If your core beliefs stay the same, which they will unless you examine them, you will always boomerang back to your old behaviors, even if they are behaviors that you don't like. People pleasing comes from these type of core beliefs, things like I'm not good enough, I don't deserve it, they're more important than me, I'm being selfish, what's wrong with me? Beliefs like that, those are core beliefs that drive the behaviors of your everyday life. And for our behaviors to change, our beliefs must change first. The third thing I know now that I wished I'd known then was something called reverse gaslighting. That random conversation with the therapist that I had, one of the books she recommended was this, Becoming the Narcissist Nightmare. And in this book, she talks about reverse gaslighting. And what that is you're mentally saying to yourself to stay grounded when you're being blamed or projected on or gaslit. You say to yourself, I don't believe you. That's not what happened. I know my truth and I own my truth. So you say that to yourself in order to stay in your body, to stay in your own presence, in your own truth, and your subconscious hears you and will help you stay grounded in that truth. And this mindset, having this type of mindset is vital. It's vital that you don't abandon yourself. The fourth thing that I know now is that no contact isn't selfish. It was actually my superpower. Going no contact with him, when he left on that day, I never spoke directly to him again. And that's called going no contact. Everything was done via email. There was no emotion, just the facts. But I had so much guilt about this, about just cutting off communication completely. And that partially comes from this bond that you have with any type of relationship, but especially in this type of abusive relationship, there is a bond, a hormonal bond, a chemical bond that makes going no contact very difficult. So it has to be like a line in the sand, no contact, and that became my superpower. I asked my therapist about it because, again, I felt really guilty. And she said, it's not cruel. It's not selfish. It's you protecting yourself. It's you protecting your nervous system, protecting your energy. No one else is going to do that for you. And it's you taking your power back. Communicating with him would just give your power away. And you can't take your power back when you're in the presence of someone who you've been giving your power to all along. Being out of his energy was the only way to heal my nervous system. We can't heal ourselves in the same environment that hurt us. And so every time I held this boundary of no contact, I told myself that I matter, that my peace was the most important thing. The fifth thing that I know now is that you have to grieve. You have to allow yourself and expect yourself to have grief and not feel guilty about it. I had to grieve who I thought he was, the version of him that I fell in love with, the relationship that I thought we had. I had to grieve that. I had to grieve the dream of having found my lifelong partner. I had to grieve the family that I lost in the divorce, his 2 daughters, his sister and her family, his parents. I had to give myself time to grieve that because that was a huge loss. The 6th thing I know now is that I needed to learn the red flags of this type of person, and I needed to learn them in order to advocate for myself. I realized this wasn't the first narcissist that I had been with, but I just didn't know the signs before. And I had been trained to ignore the red flags. I had been trained to be the peacekeeper. So this was completely foreign to me. And if you're someone who's always put others first, it's imperative that you learn these types of behaviors, these types of red flags, because that codependent narcissistic bond is very strong. It's like a magnet. And these relationships aren't just in our intimate relationships. They are friends, family, bosses, coworkers. So being aware of the red flags will empower you. And I had to remind myself, just because I wouldn't do that to other people doesn't mean that other people won't do it to me. And that naivety had kept me stuck for so many years. And once we know the signs, we can stop explaining them away sooner and start protecting ourselves sooner. The 7th thing I know now is that going through something like this, you have to have support. I started going to Codependence Anonymous, a 12-step program, the week after he left, and I went religiously for 3 years. And it was life-changing for me to see the patterns that I had repeated over and over and over in my life. Up until that point, I hadn't seen them. I wasn't seeing them. I also started seeing a trauma-informed therapist, and I saw her religiously for 1.5 years. It's important to get professional support because they can give you the tools and the language that your family and friends, no matter how well-meaning they are, how loving they are, they just don't have those tools to teach you. And I'm not a therapist, but I am a coach, and I'm someone who's been there. I can guide you through this from a place of lived experience. The 8th thing that I know now is, in the end, this wasn't about him at all. This was about me choosing me. I had spent my lifetime putting everyone else first, choosing their comfort over my own. And this was the line in the sand, the brick to the head that I needed to start realizing that I needed to choose me. It didn't matter what other people chose. It was about me choosing me first. And that same choice is available to you. It's okay to choose you. It's okay to stand up for yourself. It's okay to choose yourself first. Respect, acceptance, and love start becoming more readily available to you when you start giving them to yourself first. That's where the real work is, and that's where the real freedom is. If part of my story resonated with you, I want to say that you're not alone, and there is a path forward. I've walked the path, and my passion now is guiding other women to their own transformation, to their own empowerment, to their own confidence and courage to live life like they want to live it. And if you're ready for that kind of support, there's information about my coaching down in the description below this video. If this sparked something in you, I would love for you to share in the comments. What was your biggest takeaway? Your share, your story could be some other woman's lifeline that they've been looking for. And if you want to understand the harmful advice and beliefs that led me into this toxic marriage, you're going to want to watch that video right there. It's basically part 1, the journey that landed me in this marriage. I'll see you there, and thanks for watching.